Hi, this is Christy Powell with Women Talk Construction, and today we are live talking about the future of communication. We're going to unravel exciting possibilities shaping the future of communication while also discussing the simple things that we might have just forgotten about. Angela Gardner is with me, my co-host of Women Talk Construction and business development director of Hill Electric. We've got Victoria Fusco with us, the owner of Leader HQ. She's a leader in soft skills development and coaching. Alicia Brensel's here as a guest, and she is the owner of Brex Enterprises, a heavy civil construction company. So we're excited to dive in today. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi.
We're excited to have Victoria and Alicia on.
Yes, we
Hello,
are.
everyone.
Thank you. How's your day going? It's Friday, thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
It's going.
It's been
And
a long
going
week.
and going.
I feel like it's been a long week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
some of the ideas we're going to discuss in this next hour, we've kind of talked about some questions and we looked over some things. One of the first things that I really want to talk about is in non-traditional professional settings. It's a little different, right, than when we're in a business office, just a little different. The communication styles between men and women are different. What strategies or techniques can individuals employ to ensure effective and respectful communication regardless of gender? And I'd love to start with Victoria here because I feel like she's got some really good tips for us.
Yes, this is like all we do is communication techniques. One of the things that we teach is just the basis of all communication is being able to zoom out in perspective and understand that everybody's past dictates how they perceive the world around them, which just translates into give everybody grace, including yourself. And being able to respond versus react. And the difference between that is just react is attached to emotion and just the first thought, and response is attached to taking a pause and being in control of your responses, reactions, and actions outside of that as well.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
I'd say that's a really good. I love the react and respond difference because I think sometimes, when you get in the field or you get into different situations, that emotion immediately comes out first.
Yeah.
And I don't think you really ever receive training unless, Victoria's there on how to control that.
Mhm.
So I love that. And I would say the thing I would add on top of that, like she said, is to just keep that perspective of when you're out there in a job, 99% of people want to do a good job. And so anything that comes in the form of communication is people trying to manage that and figure out how they can do a good job. And so I think coming from that perspective, like Victoria said, that is key. Is just keeping perspective on yourself and whoever else you're communicating with.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Assume the best.
Assume the best. That is always good, right? Instead of, and it's hard to assume the best sometimes when you have so many things coming at you at the same time, right? Like you're dealing with some things over here that aren't exactly the way you want them to go, and you've got somebody on the other side that wants something from you, and then to respond to that person in front of you, it's not always easy to not respond, right? And to think first. One of the things I wanted to add is active listening, and that's something that I've had to put into play not only in my family, but in business too, is instead of listening to answer, listen to hear what the other person is saying. And when you're busy and you have a lot going on, like I said, you got people coming at you from different directions. It's not good. How about you, Angela? I know you've got something really good to talk about.
Well, the listening part I have down because I learned that at a very
Yeah,
young
you're
age
really good
from my
at that.
dad. But the thing that I really had to learn early on in my professional career was that I needed to step away, wait to respond, think it through, depending upon what it was. And I totally agree with you, Christy. If you're leading a company or doing stuff like that, you've got things coming at you every which way, and you don't even know what your emotions are that day because you're also bringing to the table. If you're a mom, you're bringing to the table the kid stuff, all the stuff. Oh, what am I to cook for dinner? And then I have this interaction with an employee, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do with that? So something big for me was just knowing how long and to just to say, let me think about that.
Mm.
I would love to ask the next question about.
Well, I still have one more thing I wanted
Oh,
us to like talk about. So when
okay.
it comes to gender changes, right? We didn't really hit on that very
Oh,
much.
yeah.
And just, the conversation difference. I feel like open-mindedness is the most important thing that we can have in the back of our minds, to understand diverse communications. And that doesn't always mean, and their communication style. My husband and I have a completely different communication style. Everybody does, right? We all have our own style. And I feel like being more open-minded about what somebody else might be feeling, thinking, speaking, coming from, where they're coming from is so important. I'd love to hear your all thoughts on that. And if you think that if we came to the conversation, especially if it's not just gender, it could be just different upbringings, different cultures, right? You can go from one state to the next in the United States and it's a completely different ball of wax. The conversations are different. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I will also say for our employees, something we've found, and it hits communication on every front, is each person's individual personality. And so we've actually gone to the effect of personality testing our employees.
Nice.
And so we've done the color one, so everybody knows whose color they are. And so I think, in terms of me as a leader, that's been my biggest area of growth, is realizing as I'm communicating things, I got to recognize who I'm communicating to and what their personality type is. And so I think that drives a lot of the more effective communication on our team that's been happening, is knowing the type of way somebody thinks can help tailor your message to get more effective communication out of it. That's been, I think, game changer for us in the last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of companies are trying to pull that in too.
Yeah.
How about you, Victoria? What do you think?
So something that we practice that's kind of a deeper dive other than personality tests, which is such a great and wonderful tool for team dynamics, right? And, you said that you're already practicing that, which is amazing. A lot of employers, like you said, they're kind of tipping into that. They're not quite there yet. But something just a little deeper dive into that is actually love languages. So that's something that we teach is recognition practices and love languages. And that is, even in personal relationships, something, I know we talked about this with Women Talk Construction last time, where it's like, you could be asking for a hug from someone who just wants you to do the dishes, and it completely translates in the workplace as well. How do they communicate? What actually makes them feel appreciated? And that's where a lot of leaders, I think, go astray, as they say, well, I really love public praise. And so every time on a company-wide meeting, they praise this employee, and this employee just wants private praise, and they want it from an email, or they want it from a phone call, or maybe they just want it in a handwritten card, right? So it kind of just like going down to that base level of how can we eliminate the gender roles of it and say, how do you want to feel appreciated? Like, how do I communicate to you so that you really see me, hear me, and value me?
Love that. Do you have anything to add to that, Angela? Are you ready to move on? Oh, go ahead, Alicia. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I can just picture me asking like my 50-year-old operators, what is your love language?
What is your love language?
Yeah. So we say it as, how do you feel most appreciated? And a lot of times it's not just a
It just
survey.
equates to love language, right?
Yeah, a lot of times it's actually just paying attention and saying, oh, I sent him a handwritten card. He really liked that. Okay, let me write that down. Or, hey, I picked up the phone and we had a phone call and he just really, really liked that. So a lot of times it is, because I work with a lot of manufacturing, industrial, and it's these men that if you were like, hey, what's your love language? They're going to be like, what's that? Like, oh, leave me alone. So a lot of it is more an observation and testing and tweaking it and trying again.
Awesome.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add. I love that. I mean,
Okay, well,
throw it in
you
there.
are ready to like dive into the
Well-
next topic. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I'm pushing forward. I know. Well, okay, we'll do it. So, we're going to talk about stereotypes and biases, and how they can influence, conversations between men and women, and how we perceive each other. So, how would you say, both of you say, that we can challenge these biases and create a more inclusive, understanding environment, where there's effective communication happening between all of us?
Mm.
How are there any tips that you can give us on that?
Especially in non-traditional roles, right?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll say when I first read, because you guys sent the questions, thank you. When I first read this question, I almost had a different take on it. And
Mm.
my individual take was I felt as myself as a developing leader, and I think I've seen this in other leaders as well, is we sometimes put ourselves in our own stereotyped
Mhm.
box,
Mhm.
and it limits our communication to others just as much as the stereotypes happen out there. And I'll give an example of, I left a full-time job as an engineer in the medical device field to run a construction company. Well, going from a leadership role to another leadership role, I was like, I'm the business owner. I have to know all of these
Mhm.
things. And so I didn't. And I found myself limiting myself and
Mm.
I wouldn't put myself in situations that I
Mm.
had to communicate as a business owner because I was scared to say the wrong thing. And so, I think if there was any advice to give and to, challenge those stereotypes and biases is to look at yourself internally first, make sure you're not putting
Mhm.
yourself in a box.
Mm.
Um, and then I think you can look outward and say, okay, how do I help somebody else get out of the stereotypical box that might occur in construction or, these non-traditional roles. And so,
Mm.
I'm sure Victoria has something, you guys have something great to add, but mine most was I put my own self in these
Mhm.
boxes. And so learning how to get out of them helped me get other people out of them as well.
Well, I
Mm.
really wanna add to that really quickly. I had been in sales for 26 years in building material industry, and I never sold to a female.
Mm.
I'm a female, right? Just like you're talking about. I was in a box. I didn't think outside of that box. So, um, when I started meeting women in this new role that were kicking butt like you in the industry, in my industry, I was like, wow, there's some pretty stinking awesome women out here. Why wasn't I selling to women? But yeah, I just wanted to confirm that it's true. We do that. We put ourselves in a box that we think we have to do what everybody else is doing instead of, looking in deep within and then also, looking outside to other things, not the same avenue everybody else is or the same revenue stream that everybody's going after in
But
my
Christy,
particular situation.
in your defense, there probably weren't very many women out there.
There weren't.
Okay, so
I had never seen any, that was part of
okay,
it. That was part of
so
it.
let's just say that.
But I didn't look either, right? I didn't
Yeah.
look either because I had a bias, right? I
Mm.
didn't even look. And then when I started seeing it, then I started looking and now they're everywhere. They're so amazing. So
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
yeah,
Okay.
it's awesome. All right. So would love to hear your thoughts, Victoria.
Well, the one thing that stuck out, just on a side note, but the definition of leadership is to guide and inspire. It's not to be the SEO Google search engine for all things. And I think a lot of people that get into leadership roles, it feels a lot. It feels heavy. It feels like we have to be the expert. We have to know all the answers. But really, your job is not to problem solve. And this is even for management too, right? It's a lot of what we teach is when you're managing, when you're leading, you don't solve problems. That's not your job
Mhm.
anymore. You have to facilitate a conversation and empower your team to be independent problem solvers. So how can you support and empower them to do the job you hired them to do, right? Like that's, I think, the first thing that just it has to shift. And the second part is just, I think, accountability as well.
Mhm.
And that, obviously it starts with the leader, but if you're in a position that you're not in a leadership position and, you're dealing with that in the workplace, a lot of the women that work with us, they are in male dominated industries, tech, finance,
Mhm.
construction, manufacturing. And they're like, help me, somebody listen to me. And the things that we talk about is, okay, what can I do that's in my kind of orbit of controlling, again, my own emotions, responses, reactions, and actions? And if it's holding people accountable, how can I influence the people around me with what I'm doing and what I'm controlling? And so I wish I had like a better one solution, but it really is just about what can I control? And if you're a leader, it's even more important that it's what can I control and how can I step into a support role
Mhm.
and listening, Christy, like you said, like listening
Yeah,
actually, like it's like a sales role, like sitting back and
it
letting
is.
other people talk. You shouldn't be the one talking the most,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I'm good at that when it comes to
Yeah.
sales, but I have to learn about the other part of it.
Yeah, it is.
So we have a couple people making comments online. Megan Shapiro said, yes, it's so easy to put ourselves in boxes based on our own internal narratives. And she also said law. Not sure what that means, but I'm good. I think maybe she might be in the attorney arena. So that might be what she means. And that's for sure. We would definitely want to plug that into this communication conversation. And Lance, for Yuma, I think that's his last name, but Lance just said good morning, y'all. So it's cool to see that we've got some men and women following us today and talking as well. So love your thoughts, Alicia and Victoria, on just where to go. One of the things that I had made notes about on that question was awareness. I think is really important, and education. And Angela, you might have had something that you wanted to mention about just the conversation earlier, but what do you think about that, about how important education and awareness is? Because I know that you are a huge advocate of educating not only the public, but your own team and students in your community. And I'd just love to hear what you think about the whole stereotypical conversation around education and awareness, and how we can make that bridge just a little bit easier to walk across.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, and maybe I'll answer this. Let me know if I answered it wrong. But what I'm hearing you say,
there's no wrong answer.
Okay. A lot of times it's not just the verbal part, it's seeing, right? You see. And, that's why I get put in situations, because it's visual to see, hey, there's a female working in this male, populated, extremely populated electrical company, because I think there are not very many of us. And I think that's what students need to see more of. So when I think of educating in that way, that's what I'm thinking of, is letting them see everyone. And that even means, like, we're in this Women Construction Forum, and, we're all about, when we go into the career centers, we want women of various ages and backgrounds to be there, so that they can share their experiences, because everyone has their own experience being in this role. And one of the things about the stereotypes that I think it would be good to touch on eventually is just talking about the whole, the different generations that are hitting our industry. I hear lots of chat on social about it, but and Alicia probably has a lot about it. Yeah. Camper Parker has a lot to say about it.
Yes.
And I love her, but I'm sure Alicia's dealt with this. It's, it's just, I don't know, for some reason we think the young professional doesn't want to work or out there anymore.
They just want to work differently than we do.
Exactly. It's just different. And that's why we're having this conversation today.
Yes. So in that lane of conversation, how do you promote diverse perspectives? In your role, Victoria, in your role, Alicia, in your role, Angela, how do we promote diverse perspectives? I'll start just by saying one of the things I do is just ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And that's all I got, right? Like that's how you find all the information out that you need to be able to make a decision, or to help somebody, get through something that they're trying to get through, or maybe they just don't understand, right? There's a lot of things I still don't understand. And I like it when people ask me questions, because I feel like they are listening, right?
I'll say we encourage a lot of different outlets for feedback. And so, we have employee development days where we bring the entire company in. And that, for us, working over a couple different states, that's a really valuable time to get all of these ideas out on the table. And so we encourage, everybody to, if they have a thought on a better process, communicate it to us. Nothing is off the table. We recently implemented a virtual suggestion box. So there's a QR code, scan it. We have our Slack channel as well. And so we are trying to just implement a lot of different communication touch points and encourage people to be comfortable putting their thoughts in those. So we have one that's anonymous, we have one that's company-wide, and then we have one that's in person. And so we just amplify the number of touch points of getting this diversity of thought out there and open. And so we hope by doing that, we'll continue to have those good conversations. And, me in the office most of the time, we could hire somebody that's 18 years old that goes in the field and sees how to make a change. We want to
Yeah.
capture that, and we want him or her to be able to feel comfortable in an outlet putting that somewhere, and not to be told like, no, it's a bad idea. And so, yeah, that's that. I would say, we just encourage a lot of touch points to get that data and catering to how people feel comfortable delivering it. And so that's one thing we do.
Have you made a change to your company based on some perspectives that you hadn't thought about before in your team?
We are, I won't say any like huge changes, but like small
Doesn't matter.
efficiencies
Yeah.
in terms of like job layout and
Nice.
activities that happen on site. Maybe it made sense in the bid to put it as item number 3. Well, maybe it needs to be item number 1. And so stuff like that on job sites, I think we're always doing. I would say from an in-house perspective, in terms of like the our administration, we just completely revamped everything in terms of incorporating some of these good ideas people have. And they
Nice.
could be as simple as like, hey, everybody needs a winter coat. We didn't order winter coats because a lot of people had them. We took the suggestion box for getting winter coats for everybody. So
Nice.
another like little stuff we get is, hey, this crew needs another trailer. Okay, I'll take that, and we'll see if we can get another trailer. So the important part I want to say, though, about encouraging diversity of thought and creating outlets to do it is there has to be a follow-up.
I was going to say that. It has
Sorry,
to be
I
a
took it. Go
follow-up.
ahead.
No,
You go.
no, keep going with it. Because that, yes. Follow-up, right?
Yes, because I think if
First, you
people
don't
start,
care.
right, if people start putting stuff somewhere and no one acknowledges it, they're going to stop doing it.
Yeah.
So we make a point to document and track how many suggestions were implemented. Here's what we're doing. Here's maybe why we're not doing some of these other things. And so that's, I'll let you kind of take the rein on the follow-up, but that is equally as important as encouraging the feedback.
No, I totally agree. I was doing all of that same stuff in my family business 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, and it was so important. The follow-up was critical. If you did not do that, you actually were hurting yourself more. So I'm glad to see that y'all are doing that. Thank you. Now we'll hear from Victoria.
No, those are all fantastic points, and they're really good anchor points of like, listen, get curious, not frustrated, and then follow through. Like, how are you holding it accountable to actually, take the action needed? And right, I like how you said either why we're doing something or why we're not doing something, and being able to just open up the dialogue for conversation. I think a lot of employees, whether you're a W-2 or independent contractor, it can almost feel like a parent-child relationship where they feel like they're not really a part of the decision-making, which directly correlates to not feeling appreciated, which we all know is really the main reason why people stay or leave, right? It's not really benefits and pay anymore. It's are there opportunities for growth, and do they feel appreciated? And just being able to sit back and say, all of this isn't directed at me. How can I separate myself from this? And that for my business owners, because being a business owner myself, just remember that the more you can separate yourself from the business, your business is not your baby. It is the vehicle to which you serve clients and serve the bigger purpose. And so feedback is just data. And we want to make sure we make data-driven decisions in business. And a lot of times when I say that, even for leaders and executive teams, they see it as, well, then there's no empathy within that. There's no emotion. That's so cold. And it's like, it can be two of the same. It doesn't have to be intertwined. Back to react versus respond, right? React is emotion mixed in, and respond is a parallel two-way forward conversation. So if you can think of, getting feedback like that, where it's like, okay, I have this thing, it's not a part of me, it's not mixed in. And being able to just separate that too makes feedback easier, right? Because apparently you have done that now, because you're getting feedback and you're able to make decisions, and it doesn't hurt your feelings, or you feel like, I don't want feedback anymore. Like I'm at capacity. Like that's not good for the growth of the business.
Yeah, gosh, what great advice.
I
So
know, yeah.
we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about conflict resolution. So conflict resolution is a common challenge in diverse work environments. And when we say diverse work, it could be the weather, it could be people, it could be business decisions, it could be states, because things are run differently in different states. So diverse is like diverse everything. This is like a whole ball of wax. What advice can we offer to the listeners about helping men and women in non-traditional roles navigate conflicts and misunderstandings and build a stronger working relationship through communication? And I'll let whoever wants to take this one first.
I'll tap into this first.
Okay.
I have two
Yay.
big points
Okay.
of it. I just literally, probably a half an hour ago, I got a lovely email, and I say lovely very nicely, email from an engineer who we're working with on a project where communication has been absolutely terrible. So it happens, like you said, it could be the weather, it could be who you're working for, it could be a client. And so it could come from anywhere. And so there's two things I like to lean on, and maybe a third thing. But the first thing is agreement. The agreement of the issue and the solution has to be, like, for us, it has to be like cornerstone of everything. Because if I leave a conversation and I'm getting like head nods, that's not agreement. I need you to reiterate what the agreement is on how we move forward, type of situation. And so I think a lot of conflict can be nipped in the butt prior to happening by having good conversations, with leaving with agreement and active conversations.
Yeah.
And so, just a simple example, as a business owner, I have a lot of clients who come to me and like, I can't get people to come to work on time. Well, my response to that is, okay, ask them what the agreed amount of times they can be late is. Then they verbally confirm, like, I shouldn't be late. You're right. I agree to that. And so that kind of helps negate stuff on the upfront, is having that agreement and conversations, and just it's a good communication practice to know that you're leaving with the same ideas as somebody else. And I will say the second thing, just for me, is to always act respectfully. So if I would have this conversation with a family member, and act in a way that I would be proud of conducting myself, I'd go back to I think it was Victoria, or I forget who said it, but take the time before you respond. Take the time. And I'm just a kill with kindness person. So I would rather go the extra mile to be kind. And sometimes I think that's more effective, definitely 100% in conflicts. So those are my tips.
Yeah, definitely. And problem solving instead of personal differences, like put those in their places, right? Personal differences is not really important. It's solving the problem. That's really important. Right. It's easy to get in your own head about, like, why did they say that this way? And why didn't they say it this way? But at the end of the day, it's all about the task at hand. It's not about our emotions or, what our personal differences might be. So we have some questions here. I think maybe we should take a minute to answer them. Okay. So Cristiano Sanchez says, this is another, gentlemen, love the points being made here. Better visibility and comms across age group, empowering staff via acknowledgement, more emphasis on follow-ups and feedback. Nicole Farr said, following you guys closely, I'm a talent acquisition leader who is construction specific here in the Low Country. Communication is key, and I appreciate you all. So I thought they had questions, but thank you very much for your comments. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yes. We appreciate you listening and sharing, because this is the only way we're going to change the future of communication, right? Is open dialogues and just discussing some things. And we don't have to talk negatively, right? These are positive attributes of what we can do to make things better in our industries and beyond. So, Alicia, thanks for all of that. Victoria, you want to add anything to that particular dialogue about focus on problem solving?
Gosh, I could go on and on. Obviously, this is just like all we do, right? Soft skill development, communication, conflict, delegation, connection. And what I'll say is that when you're in conflict, and I think some people that were at the recent event last August got to hear my special secret sauce for conflict resolution. But the biggest thing, and we've talked about it a couple times, is listening, asking more questions. And again, coming back to empowering whoever you're talking about to solve the problem independently of them, like of you. So a lot of leaders talking about gender roles, women in leadership specifically, we tend to have a codependent work environment because, as mothers, as caretakers, as the people who do all the things, we kind of like it, right? We like to be leaned on. And so a lot of times when I work with women in leadership, the first step is like, okay, how do we sever the tie? Like, how do we step out of that codependent work environment? Needing to be needed is the definition of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Very
I
fun.
might have to
very
raise
fun.
my hand there.
Yes, but the secret sauce to that is really just, one, is it a people or a task problem? People means more complex. It means there's more hurt feelings involved. We tend to either avoid or take a long time and wait for it to explode, and then they let the person see themselves out, instead we want to control it. So people versus task. Is it a feeling or is it a fact? Another word for feeling would be assumption, right? Jim doesn't like me. Okay. Is that a fact or is that a
Why?
feeling? Did you ask Jim? Did Jim tell you, I don't like you, So that would be more of a fact, and not to discredit feelings, right? Because they're very real things, but more assumption. Are you assuming, or is this a true fact? So people are
And
tasks.
usually it's in our head, right? Usually that's
1,000%.
it's in our head. We dream up these crazy thoughts, right?
Yes. But that's that staying in ego, making it about yourself, having to separate, right? And then the third one is, what two solutions are you weighing? And so what this does is it puts you in a coach seat, right? Coach versus a consultant, shepherd versus Jesus. I'm here to walk you through it. I'm not here to solve your problems. So what two solutions are you weighing? This empowers the other person to think for themselves, and then trains them to solve problems independently of you. So if I could give any advice, remember that formula, because it is really so powerful. And then you don't have to call your friend or your peer and get external validation. You can validate yourself and validate the other person.
Yeah. Open dialogue and empathy goes a long way.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you. How about you, Angela? What do you?
Well, I'm just going to make a comment.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many books and videos and everything else that I read on conflict resolution, learning how to be a leader at the age of 30. And if I would have just had this little discussion and had Victoria and Alicia part of my crew, it would have been so much easier.
Yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Learning by failing.
Yes,
failing fast and failing forward.
And I am very much a codependent. I probably
we all are in some capacity, even the best of us.
So that was it.
So I guess we will move on to the next topic. Let me look here and see if we have any comments. LinkedIn user said, yes, our thoughts are not facts, which is true. They are not facts. We have to do research to get facts, right? And get data. Even though that doesn't sound very personal, if we want to be better communicators, research and data is a lot more helpful. So our next topic, did you want to start that one, Angela, about nonverbal communication?
I will, because that's a biggie.
It could be our face.
Yes.
It could be our body language. Yeah.
Right? I don't want to talk. I learned that one too. So it's about nonverbal communication and how it plays a significant role in how individuals perceive and understand each other. It really does. And especially in our environments, how can men and women in non-traditional roles become more aware of and leverage nonverbal cues to enhance their communication and collaboration? I'm sure y'all got some great tips for us.
How do we create a culture of collaboration between all diverse groups?
Yes. Victoria, why don't you take a stab at this first?
That's my mission statement for the Leader HQ. I'm just kidding. How do we create culture, collaboration, connection? It's a lot of little working parts. I would say nonverbal communication is the biggest one, right? So I think you're referencing the event that just happened a couple weeks ago. 93% of all communication is nonverbal, while 7% is spoken word. 38% of that 7% is tone of voice. So not just this, more about, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's very much a real thing, right? And we even dive into passive aggressive emails, how to convey a tone to written communication as well, because a lot of conflict starts and ends with text and email, especially in the workplace, right? So nonverbal communication, there's open and closed body language. When we just focus on body language, open says, I trust you, I hear you, I see you, I want to know more, I'm engaged, right? Salespeople practice this a lot, mirroring, eye contact, eyebrow raises. We talked a little bit about that. And then closed body language, like you said, Angela, everything's closed off, it's in, it says, I'm not confident, I'm not listening, I'm bored, I'm irritated. And it doesn't matter what you say. If your arms are crossed while you're saying it, which a lot of leaders do this, which is hilarious that they do this because I'm listening. No. Open palms, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we praise team worship it while someone is talking to us? Because that will say, I'm hearing you, I'm listening, and you are valued. I could go on and on, but I'm not going to because I'll take up all the time.
Yes. So just so all of our listeners understand, let me read this. You ladies rock. I'm really loving this talk. Thank you. That's cool.
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
that's cool.
Janine Penny Perino. Thank you, Janine. I think that's how you pronounce that. That's the hardest part of this job, by the way, is trying to pronounce people's names. But one of the things that you don't know about Victoria is she doesn't just talk when she coaches. There is active communication going on in the room. Like there's balls, there's toys, there's writing instruments. Like there's a lot of movement going on when she's teaching her team, and it's fun. She makes leadership.
You remember her stuff.
Well, I tell people, I'm like, you're either going to be traumatized or you're going to love this, but either way, it's going to do its job and you're going to remember it outside of here and implement it when it matters.
And that's how we remember, right? We're either traumatized or we had fun. So
exactly.
All right. Would love to hear what you have to say about the topic, Alicia.
Oh, I mean, I should be taking notes, honestly, on this part of it. I'll say from our perspective is, given, our employees that we have, a lot of them aren't exposed to leadership training like this on any amount of capacity. And so I think it starts with employers taking the step to realize no matter your trade or your business, this is important to have a functioning culture that, like we said, induces collaboration and, working towards that shared goal. And so we have done some small trainings that I've put on myself, barely skim the surface probably of what Victoria does. But I would say, a lot of it comes with knowing your traits and your ticks and stuff like that too. I have somebody that works for me that's amazing. But she's sometimes an eye roller and, it just, there's some things that may give off that she has no idea she's even doing.
I think I do that and I don't know it.
Awareness is key.
Yep. So I think part of that is just letting your employees know, or the people around you sometimes, like, hey, I'm telling you this, but I'm seeing this too. So I think sometimes that helps as well. But I would definitely say, especially in these non-traditional professional settings, awareness is like the first step. And so it's employers, it's training, it's people taking the initiative to recognize this is important. And I think, as different generations enter the workforce, this is going to become so much more critical to developing a company that isn't just going to last a year or two. These are like big business mindsets of like long-term culture building practices that I think, heck, all employers need to do. So
for sure. So we have another comment in here.
We do.
We have it on the screen. In a male-dominated industry, it's quite challenging to be heard as an immigrant woman of color. I'm treated differently, but I don't want to be the victim. Complaining to higher management. How would I navigate a situation where there's a very evident I'm treated differently? And when I voice it, challenge a technical step, I'm being rude because I'm a woman and I need to be nice and happy. The number of times I've been called out by my manager just because I'm open and honest without, it looks like that was where it stopped. So do we have any, Alicia, Victoria, do you have any advice for, and I cannot pronounce her first name. I'm not even going to try to butcher it.
I mean, I would say something that I learned in my own anxiety journey, actually, with realizing, when I was dating, it was same guy, different body. I think, a lot of women, we've been there, right? And I realized it was my decision. Like, who am I letting into my life? Like, I'm like, oh, hello, it's me. It's not happening to me. And so what I learned in that is being confident. And I think a lot of women, we struggle with this. But being confident in saying, do I actually like this? Right? Because sometimes no matter how much we try to change our environment, again, what we control is in our orbit, what comes out. So if you're doing everything that you can, my grandma says hot coals on their head, Okay. When you're doing everything that you can, it is still up to them. It's a two-way conversation. And so, I mean, I don't have a necessarily specific solution without like coaching you through it, but something I can say is awareness and, asking not, do they like me? Do they hear me? Do they value me? Is, do I want to be here? Is this the environment that is going to promote my growth? Do I like this? Even just as simple as that. Do I like this?
Well, and, just asking questions, right? Do you really know for a fact facts versus do you really know for a fact that they don't like you or they don't want you there or that you're a woman? Like that was in my head for a long time when I was in sales, and it wasn't true. When I started meeting men that I started and we started working together, we were like the greatest friends, and it was the greatest situation, not only for the company, but for me. And, it just brings all those walls down. Questions bring walls down. Right? Listening to their perspective instead of just streaming up things. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, listener, but just, the self-awareness, like do a self-check. I have to do a self-check all the time. I think that's probably one of the best things that I can do to make sure that I'm not communicating poorly and that I'm always open-minded. Anybody else want to try that?
Something I've found for success too is finding a mentor. A lot of those scenarios, finding a mentor that they've probably been through a lot of those situations. And so, reaching out, whether it's an organization or somebody directly in your company, find somebody that you trust that you can kind of check yourself. And I've found that to be a little bit helpful, especially too, since, like I said, they've probably been through situations very similar. And so that's for me has been a big guiding principle. And if I ever need to run something by that, like run that by somebody, straight to the mentor.
That's so helpful too. And that's something we just talked about right on the podcast, Angela, is and mentorship doesn't have to be formal.
No,
you can be picking up the phone saying, hey, have you been through this before? Can you help me? That is huge. So if you know anybody and I highly recommend you joining a group of women in your field, because that's where you're going to find your confidants. That's where you're going to find a safe place to have conversations and get input from folks that may have been down that road 100 times, before you had to reach it. So I want to hear Angela's thoughts, because we love talking about mentoring and we think it's really important.
Yeah, well, this is my thought, and it's really just to say that every one of your 3 thoughts, or more than that, were wonderful and spot on. And I'm going to speak from hearing the females, younger or whatever females in our Women Construction Forum that call us for advice or just to touch base that we hear from. They follow each of your things that you laid out, and then they follow that path. And one right now is rocking it in DC in construction, and she's in the mining industry. But she has done all those steps because she was in that situation. And so I just want to confirm that all of your things work. Try them and do them.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's a really good point too. Sometimes we don't want to make changes in our own lives, right?
Yeah.
But if you do take the advice of a mentor or somebody that's been through there, it's just cool to see these women that we get to talk to and mentor, whether it be casually or formally, get to see them grow and blossom and not worry about the things that kept us in the weeds, maybe when we were younger. And that's why we do what we do, right, Angela? Is because we really want to make it easier for the next generations of women who are in non-traditional roles. And
we learn new things too.
We learn all the time. Yeah. I was going to say reverse mentoring is a thing. I learn a lot. I learn a lot from Victoria. I learn a lot from, I have not gotten to know Alicia very well, but just in the short period of time we've known each other, I've learned something from her. I learned something from Alex, the young lady that worked with me at 84 Lumber, and she's 25 years old. So it's just cool that we learn from each other. And that's really how we bridge the communication gap, right? It's not just with men and women, it's women and women. It's coming from any diverse background. So I hope that helped you. Lance says Victoria's a baller. That was the second time he said that. He thinks that you have got it going on. Love your messaging. Kathy Geiger, loving this discussion. Thank you so much for your time and advice. Thank you, Kathy, for listening. We appreciate everything that you do for our industry. We know that you are kicking butt where you're at every day.
Yeah.
Glad to know that you're listening and supporting us. All right. So any other comments about that particular topic before we move on to the last one?
No, but I do want to make this comment before when we'll probably say it again. But both of our guests are consultants in their various fields, and you should definitely reach out to them because you see how great they are.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we can move on to the next.
We didn't want to. We really thought about hoarding them and not letting anybody know. But
You
we
can find them on
decided that wasn't.
Instagram, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
wherever.
That's so
We
funny.
decided that letting the rest of the world know how great they were was probably the most important thing.
Appreciate you.
So now we're moving on to building trust and rapport.
Mhm.
So one of the biggest things that I like to do is encourage open and transparent communication.
Mhm.
And I mean, all these things are simple, right? But we just forget.
Yeah.
We forget we're in the weeds of things, right? Whether it be business or personal. So building trust and rapport is essential for successful teamwork. We know that,
Mhm.
regardless of the gender. How can individuals in non-traditional roles foster an environment of trust and open communication, allowing for the free exchange of ideas and perspectives, even though they're not the same?
Mhm.
So who wants to start that one?
I say the expert. Let Victoria, the expert, start this one.
I think it all comes down to those basics we talked about in the beginning: zooming out in perspective, acting out of patience. And if you want to do the, zoom out in perspective, act out of patience, to remember it, reacting versus responding. I mean, the basic fundamental human skills needed to communicate, to gather friends and people around you really has a big impact on how the culture is going to be. Listening, all those things we already spoke about, putting them into practice and realizing that these are all habitual skill sets, which habits take time and intention, 1% every day. And remember to give yourself grace when you kind of skip up on that. And I want to say too, for my employers, because this is a big one that I get a lot with an objection, is training people to then leave. This has come up a lot. And I think in that realm of different perspectives and different people, a lot of employers are afraid to train their people on communication style and create a better work environment because they're afraid they're going to leave. But having that transparent, open communication of saying, hey, I'm training you, let's keep it open. If they plan to leave, the hope is that you have a transparent communication line open. They'll tell you, and you can plan for it a little bit further out, like 4 months instead of 2 weeks. So that's on another kind of side of that. But
yeah, well, and I want to point that out
That's
too.
interesting.
When you're fostering a collaborative and supportive team, they're not going to want to leave.
Yeah.
Money is not that important to people anymore. Their lifestyle and how they're living and what they have to deal with and emotionally and mentally and physically is really driving people's decisions to move. It is not money. You can throw all the money that you want to at it. All the research that we've done, it is not money. It's feeling like they belong, feeling like they're a part of something, and then feeling like they have a support system that's really there for them and they're not just a number. I think that's really important. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I know that was kind of two sides, but
no, it was good. I like two sides. I like all the sides.
Yeah.
It helped me frame my thoughts too. So I'll piggyback off that one because I definitely want to add to that. As an employer, we have 50 employees. It's, we've always been very open with our employees that we will pour into you. We hope that you pour into us back. But if you ever want to leave for a better opportunity, talk to us about it.
Yeah.
And so we've actually had employees leave and come back.
Awesome.
Because we open that door of like, hey, you got to do what's best for you. I am never going to stand in your way at what's best for anyone, an employee. And if that includes leaving, but coming back later, great. If that includes leaving forever, good luck on your endeavors. And so, we have never let that kind of hamper our training or anything like that. But I know a lot of, there's a similar thing of, people putting their stories out there in business on Instagram and their employees out there because they don't want them being poached. But
Yeah.
to me,
Uh,
it's like it's the same discussion of, people aren't going to leave if they're happy and appreciated
right.
Yep.
and they see
Yeah.
a path for themselves for the future. So
And
as
they're
employers,
complimented on their
right.
hard work, right? That's a
Yep.
compliment to be highlighted like
Yep.
that.
I have a
Yep.
statistic, another one.
Yay. I love
So,
data.
three, and this is really about having your employees be ambassadors of the brand past their time with you, right? Like you said, someone came back, but 3 to 4 people tell 3 to 4 other people about a good experience, and 13 to 14 people of a bad experience. If that's not mic drop enough to just have an open conversation
Right.
and pour in, like you said, Alicia, and they hopefully will pour back. But it's like a relationship, you have to pour into each other, and if they leave, then that's unfortunate, but life moves on.
Yeah. And, I think too, just being another side to this, the piece of this is, I'll bring in all the Brene Brown. I love
Oh,
her.
yeah,
I
I
know
love
you guys
her.
know.
Yeah.
I have found
Yeah.
I knew it. The best way I've found with trust and rapport is to lean into my vulnerabilities as a leader with my team.
Yeah.
Times are tough. Tell them about it. Tell
Yeah.
them how we're going to get out of the storm together.
Yeah.
I've found when I've kept my insecurities close, then the team, people make assumptions about what's going on. And so me being a better leader has really come from a lot leaning into those vulnerabilities. And that initially, I think, I think, it's hard to do that sometimes and say, hey, I'm the leader. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But on the same token, you pull people in, like Victoria said, that then everybody helps solve the problem. And so my burden alone is not my burden. It's a team effort. It's a culture builder. And I think that is like the biggest builder of trust in our company, is knowing that everybody has each other's back. But it starts with leaning into some of that vulnerability,
The hard
as she would
thing.
say, for sure. So that was my two on that. I will say we do pool our employees. So I take every development day, it's like a 5-question anonymous survey, and they rank how we're doing in terms of our culture and our pillars of our culture. And then one of that is, how do you feel? It's like 1 to 5. How acknowledged do you feel in your position, type of thing.
I love that.
And I found that, as we make changes and do things, I can directly correlate to the data of seeing, some of those scoring systems rise. And so trust is like something you're like, how do I measure trust as a leader? It's a lot of those type of questions, like Victoria's mentioned, is do you feel appreciated? Do you feel acknowledged? Do you feel, are you fulfilled? And that's how you measure that type of stuff. And so I've found that pretty effective for us.
Then you're not guessing too with solutions. I think like that's what a lot of leaders that come to me, I call it the flavor of the month coach. Like they always have a new consultant coach in all the time and nothing changes. And it's like, well, are you polling your people? Are you getting data? Are you going strictly off of those decisions, not just, I saw this on TikTok, so it's got to work for us. It's like, okay, well, tell me how that works out. So I think that's awesome, Alicia, that you do that, because
do you think that career path guidance is really good for the team too? Alicia, I don't know if you're doing that yet, but a lot of people may be stuck in a job they really don't like, but they've been watching another job in the company. I think that's really important, is to be able to have somebody to talk to about, hey, I think I'm going to try that. It may not be for me, but could I try it, or could I shadow? And I figured the way you've been talking, Alicia, that was something you probably are already implementing. I think it's valuable.
I think with us, we construction as a whole, we could talk about, the skills gap for a whole episode itself. And so as we look to fill, hey, what happens when our 40, 50-year-old operators retire? Having that career path of what it looks like for somebody who might not be exposed to construction or whatever company, and letting them know, like, you do have a path here. and here's what it
Mm.
looks like. You know, we haven't done a lot of this yet, but it's on our radar for this year is, you know, what criteria can we set at every single level so that somebody knows exactly the tasks they have to complete to either be considered for that next position or that next endeavor. And I think, you know, as a construction industry, I think it's often overlooked.
Mhm.
And it's not really done a lot. And you have people who are in excavators that maybe just want to stay in an excavator for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
But unless you ask them, you're
You
not
don't
going to know, hey, maybe they want to learn GPS or maybe they want to get in a dozer for once. And so it's stuff like that that I, like you said, is having a career path and what those skill set looks like that I think is important for the current workforce, but it's even more critical for people getting
Yeah.
people into construction and, you know, any of those non-traditional professional settings, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you guys have really made a big impact on our listeners today, I'm sure. And what I gathered out of today is obviously you guys are awesome at what you do. Focus on active listening, have empathy, and open mindedness to understand the diverse communication styles, right? Around you. And that can be in your family, it can be personally. Anything else you want to add, Angela, before we tell everybody goodbye?
I think that I love everything that they just said. The only thing I would add is do what you say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's very
So,
important too.
but I loved the conversation today, and
I
I
did
think
too.
it's awesome. And it gave me an idea maybe for the next one. Maybe people can let us know talking about the skills gap.
Mhm.
These ladies might be kind of cool. So we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll chat about it.
Thank you all so
Thank
much. Have
you.
a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.